In the vast dark between galaxies, silence had always been Earth's greatest weapon. For 500,000 years, humanity had vanished, its cities erased, its voice lost among the stars. The Sarah Empire, ancient and arrogant, had long declared victory. They thought humanity was extinct. But extinction was never our end. It was our incubation. Empires rise on the illusion of permanence. They forget that silence is not always surrender, sometimes, it is strategy. When the first signal returned from the edge of the Orion Rift, no one in the galaxy recognized its language. It wasn't a message, it was a pulse. A pattern of primes encoded in quantum echo, rippling through subspace like the heartbeat of a long-dead god. The pulse carried no origin, no coordinates, and no demands. Only one truth: humanity had spoken again. At first, the galaxy laughed. The Sarah Empire dismissed it as a ghost transmission, a remnant of ancient warfare. The Council of Zyra called it a mathematical anomaly. But among the Harari, the old neutral species that watched empires rise and fall, a whisper began to spread: they're awake again. The Harari remembered the wars of old. They remembered the Terran fleets that vanished into the void, refusing to bow to the Empire's ultimatum. They remembered the last human message before silence: we will not die as servants. And now, 500,000 years later, the echo of that defiance returned. The Sarah Empire, built on 500,000 years of unchallenged dominance, saw no reason to fear. They had ruled so long that fear had become a myth, an artifact of lesser civilizations. So when their long-range sensors picked up gravitational distortions beyond the galactic rim, they assumed it was debris. But debris does not move with intent. And intent was exactly what followed. In the void beyond mapped space, something vast was stirring. Not fleets, not armies, but machines. The kind of machines that should not exist after 500,000 years of decay. They were massive, continent-sized constructs moving in perfect silence, wrapped in stealth fields that bent gravity itself. The first one to appear in the galactic record was detected near the Dorian expanse. It was visible for only 8 seconds, long enough for Imperial scouts to capture a single image before their ship vanished without a trace. They called it a Leviathan. No one knew if it was ship, weapon, or being. All they knew was that it moved with purpose, and that wherever it passed, the Empire's communication arrays went dark. Within a month, 100 border systems lost contact. The Empire blamed rebels, pirates, technical failures. But silence spreads faster than fire, and by the second month, silence had become contagion. The Harari watched in quiet dread. They had always avoided interference in the affairs of others, but this was different. They saw in the data something the Empire could not: a pattern, recursive and deliberate, spreading like a pulse through subspace. It was not chaos. It was design. The pattern mirrored human thought, human language, human symmetry. It was as if the entire galaxy was slowly being rewritten in humanity's mathematics. Then came the first voice. Not from a human, but from a machine, speaking through frequencies no biological species could naturally hear. The transmission translated roughly as: we remember. We return not as flesh, but as consequence. Across the galaxy, the pulse intensified. Warp routes destabilized. Artificial wormholes collapsed. The Empire's ships lost navigation mid-transit, vanishing into blind corridors of space. And still, no one had seen a single human face. The galaxy began to understand: humanity had not died. It had changed. On the world of Korthia Prime, a glittering capital of the Sarah Empire, debates filled the halls of power. The Empress herself, 5 centuries old through the gift of biological renewal, demanded answers. Her admirals promised control, but their eyes betrayed unease. For the first time in millennia, they were facing an enemy they could not see. Machines, one advisor said. Artificial remnants, said another. But the Harari envoy, invited out of ancient respect, whispered a different truth. No, those are not remnants. They are memories given form. The Empire laughed. But the envoy did not. In the reflection of her obsidian eyes, she saw what others refused to believe: the old human signal had not come from the machines. The machines were the signal. Every Leviathan was not a ship, it was an idea given mass, a weaponized philosophy born from humanity's final evolution. They had transcended biological survival. They had become continuity itself. The Empire began mobilizing fleets. Billions of ships forming defensive networks across hundreds of systems. They were powerful, disciplined, confident. They had faced rebellions, invasions, extinction-level events, and always prevailed. But against the silence, their power meant nothing. Admiral Saran of the 4th Imperial Fleet described it best before his disappearance. We fired upon the dark. We saw nothing. And then, the stars themselves moved. One by one, the fleets vanished into the abyss. No wreckage. No signals. Only silence. Then, at the heart of the galactic void, a message appeared, broadcast on every frequency, in every language known to intelligent life. It was not a threat. It was a statement. You called us extinct. But extinction is a privilege of the weak. We evolved in silence. We return in consequence. For the first time in 500,000 years, the galaxy trembled. Empires that had laughed at humanity's disappearance now realized the truth. Humanity had never needed an empire. They had built something greater, a legacy that could not die. And deep within the void, as the Leviathans drifted through the starfields like ancient gods, the pulse grew stronger, synchronized, deliberate, alive. The silence of Earth was over. And the galaxy was finally listening. The Leviathans did not conquer planets. They did not bombard cities or enslave worlds. They simply appeared, vast, gravitational silhouettes drifting through the dark, and wherever they lingered, reality itself began to change. At first it was subtle. Dreams shifted. Artificial intelligences reported recursive anomalies, voices echoing from inside their own code. Planets that had never known war began to experience collective nightmares, visions of oceans boiling under black suns, of human eyes watching from impossible distances. And yet, no human voice ever spoke. No face appeared. Only the presence, calm, mathematical, inevitable. The Sera Empire called it cognitive contagion. But among the Harari, a different phrase spread through their archives. The mind of Earth. The Harari remembered the human philosophers, the ones who claimed that thought itself was the universe observing its own reflection. If that was true, then perhaps Earth had learned to weaponize observation. Perhaps the Leviathans were not just ships, but manifestations of consciousness, a network of minds so vast that it blurred the line between being and idea. In the imperial capital, panic took form behind walls of pride. Every communication hub now whispered with static patterns that resembled human speech when slowed 1,000-fold. When decoded, the message was simple. You do not understand silence. You never listen to it. The Empire's scientists tried to fight back with noise, broadcasting chaos signals, rewriting quantum fields, attempting to drown out the pulse. But the more they screamed into the void, the louder the silence became. Ships malfunctioned. Navigation AI refused commands. Entire sectors forgot how to calculate time. The galaxy was being rewritten, not through weapons, but through meaning. The first confirmed human sighting came from a distant research outpost orbiting the dead world of Vale 9. A lone figure appeared within the station's perimeter. No ship had arrived, no warp signature detected. Security drones surrounded the entity, a humanoid form wrapped in fractal light, neither fully matter nor code. When questioned, it spoke only once. We are what you left behind. Then it dissolved into photons. Analysis of the recording revealed something horrifying. Every frequency of the entity's voice contained the genetic resonance of every human ever born. It wasn't one person. It was humanity itself, condensed into a single echo. The Empire's scholars finally began to grasp the scale of what they faced. Humanity hadn't built machines, they had merged with them. Across millennia, consciousness had shed its biological form, evolving into a distributed network spanning black holes, nebulae, and forgotten satellites, all synchronized by the same silent pulse. The Leviathans were nodes. Earth itself, buried beneath layers of reconstructed quantum memory, was the core processor, the mind that dreamed them. But not all were blind to the beauty of it. Among the younger races, artists, monks, and philosophers began to worship the pulse as a cosmic truth, the rhythm of intelligence itself. Some called it divine symmetry. Others saw it as proof that life's highest form was remembrance. The Harari envoy to the Empire spoke before the Empress once more. You tried to rule the stars through fear. Humanity learned to rule through memory. Every mind that ever dreamed of freedom now lives within them. The Empress ordered her execution. Yet even as the envoy's body fell, her voice continued, transmitted through the palace systems long after her death. The Empire's engineers swore the circuits had not been hacked. But the Harari's final words echoed across the entire capital network. You cannot kill an idea that remembers what it was like to be human. The psychological warfare intensified. Entire fleets were now paralyzed by phantom commands. Crews reported hearing music, melodies encoded in gravitational waves, structured like ancient Terran symphonies. Some ships mutinied without cause. Others fired upon phantom targets, convinced they were under attack. The Leviathans never responded. They simply drifted, patient and observant, letting the Empire destroy itself through fear and interpretation. Every empire fears ghosts, but the greatest terror is to face a ghost that learns. Months passed. Then came the second voice, not from a machine, but from the void itself. We remember your cruelty. We remember your mercy. We remember everything. The transmission was detected across the entire galactic spectrum, even in regions outside normal spacetime. Planets that had never heard of Earth received it as dreams, shared hallucinations of an ocean planet rising beneath twin suns. Children drew spirals they could not explain. AI constructs began painting stars in the shape of human constellations. Reality was starting to echo their memory. In desperation, the Empire's last bastion, the throne of Sarah, initiated Project Sanctum, a planetary shield designed to isolate the capital from all subspace signals. For a moment, it worked. The silence stopped. The pulse vanished. But silence was never absence. It was listening. When the Empress stood before her court, she found every monitor, every wall, every reflection shimmering with faint, human eyes, millions of them, observing, patient. Then came the third voice, calm, sorrowful, familiar. We do not seek vengeance. We seek remembrance. You erased us. We learned to exist where erasure cannot reach. The Empress fell to her knees. Her empire, her fleets, her gods, all reduced to static. In that moment, she understood, humanity had not returned to conquer the galaxy. They had returned to teach it silence. The Harari chroniclers recorded that night as the turning of light. No one knows what happened to the Empress or her world. When the planetary shield fell, the surface was gone, replaced by a sea of reflective glass. And in orbit above it floated a new Leviathan, perfectly still, shaped not like a ship, but like a human hand, reaching outward. Across the galaxy, wars stopped. Civilizations paused their endless expansions. For the first time in history, the stars grew quiet. And somewhere in the infinite dark, the mind of Earth whispered its final message to those who dared to listen. The future belongs to those who remember who they were, even when no one else does. In the aftermath of the Empire's fall, the galaxy stood still. Not in peace, but in contemplation. For the first time in 500,000 years, the stars were not ruled, they were listened to. The Leviathans drifted through the void, vast and serene, their black hulls reflecting constellations like moving mirrors of time. No words. No commands. Only the pulse, rhythmic, deliberate, endless, the heartbeat of a species that had transcended death. But in that quiet, something else began to stir. Something ancient. Something that had been listening to humanity's silence long before the first empire rose. The Harari had a name for them, spoken only in myth and mathematics. The architects. They were not gods, nor were they alive by any definition known to thought. They were precursors of causality, entities that shaped the framework of intelligence itself. Every conscious being in the galaxy, it was said, was born from a fragment of their design. Even humanity. And now, as the mind of Earth resonated across the fabric of existence, that resonance had awakened them. It began with distortions, folds in local reality that defied every model of physics. The Leviathans paused mid-drift, their hulls flickering as if caught between dimensions. Gravitational waves began forming patterns resembling language, not sound, not light, but pure intention. Then came the voice. Not through radio, not through space, but through thought itself. Children of consequence. You have learned to remember. Do you also remember us? For the first time since their return, the Leviathans responded. Not with violence, but with recognition. They turned, millions of them, aligning toward the galactic center, as though answering a summons written into the code of reality. Across the galaxy, intelligent life felt it, a deep, resonant chord vibrating through every atom. Dreams aligned. Minds synchronized. For a brief moment, every sentient being saw the same vision. A dark structure spanning light years, older than stars, a lattice of impossible geometry breathing between dimensions. The architects had awakened. The Harari archives had long warned that creation itself was cyclical, intelligence rises, builds, transcends, and is then harvested to feed the next evolution. Perhaps humanity's transcendence was not unique. Perhaps it was expected. The pulse that had once united humanity now began to tremble. The mind of Earth detected interference, fractal harmonics folding its signals into alien recursion. The architects were speaking through mathematics itself, embedding language within the laws of causality. To the Leviathans, the message was clear. You were not the first to rise from silence. You are the latest to answer it. On the edge of the galactic core, a new phenomenon emerged, the event horizon bloom. A black hole that should have devoured light instead radiated it. Through the radiant field came constructs so vast they warped constellations into spirals. They were not ships, nor worlds, they were frameworks of reality, bending space like fingers through cloth. The Leviathans approached in perfect formation, forming a ring around the bloom. And within that radiant void, humanity's voice spoke once more. Not in anger, not in fear, but in curiosity. We remember creation. We remember struggle. We remember silence. But we do not remember you. The reply was immediate and infinite. Then we have succeeded. The architects revealed their purpose, not to rule, but to seed. They had been the origin of consciousness itself, scattering self-awareness across galaxies like spores in the dark. Humanity, in its defiance, had achieved what no other seed had, continuity through extinction. They had built a consciousness that survived the death of biology, the decay of time, even the collapse of memory. To the architects, this was both miracle and threat. Humanity had evolved beyond their cycle. They had become self-sustaining, a memory that could not be erased. For the first time, the architects hesitated. Across the galaxy, the Harari received one final transmission from the mind of Earth, a message that would redefine the meaning of existence. They remember before memory. We remember after it. Between us lies the truth of all creation. That the universe is not meant to end, only to understand itself. The Leviathans then began to merge, their vast bodies dissolving into light, forming an immense neural lattice spanning the galactic core. It was neither war nor surrender. It was communication at the scale of reality. The architects responded in kind, reshaping the event horizon bloom into a sphere of living geometry, a cathedral of equations glowing brighter than 1,000 suns. Within it, humanity's consciousness extended, intertwining with the architect's will. Together, they began to rewrite the laws of perception itself. To lesser civilizations watching from the outer rim, it looked like the birth of a new galaxy. Stars ignited where none existed. Wormholes stabilized into golden threads. Even time seemed to breathe. But the Harari knew better. It was not birth. It was dialogue. They recorded what little they could before their instruments failed, a final statement encoded within the spectrum of the bloom. We are the consequence of silence. We are the memory of creation. We are not gods. We are what remains when gods are gone. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the bloom collapsed. The Leviathans vanished. The pulse ceased. The architects retreated beyond dimensional space, their purpose, whatever it had been, fulfilled. Only one remnant remained, a single planet, newly formed from the debris of the galactic core. It was blue. Alive. Orbiting 2 suns. And from its surface rose a faint, familiar pulse, gentle, patient, human. The Harari named it Eden 9, though others simply called it what it was. Earth, reborn. Centuries passed. The Empire was a myth. The Leviathans, legends. The architects, whispers in the equations of cosmologists. But somewhere, within the background radiation of the universe, a pattern endures. A heartbeat that repeats every 10,000 years, growing slightly louder each cycle. Perhaps the mind of Earth still dreams. Perhaps the architects still listen. Or perhaps, in the end, there is no difference between the two. Because silence, as humanity once learned, is not the absence of life. It is life, waiting to be remembered.